everyone, and welcome back to another Half Pint session. Although I've switched to a nice little Lafroig because I have some special guests with me today. Michael, Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
So, Ethan, you go first. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ethan Bartlett, and I am the Ethan half of Michael and Ethan in a Room with Scotch.
And Michael, are you the other half?
I am the other half. I am the Michael half. My name is Michael Lilienthal, and yes, I'm the first half of the podcast.
So, how did you guys meet in the first place?
I sold Michael poison is sort of the short version. We were in...
I don't think that needs any more explanation. I think everyone goes, yeah, I've got a friend like that.
Yeah, I mean...
Tales all this time.
That seems fair to me. That really kind of... I mean, it set the tone for our whole relationship. This happened about, 18 years ago, thereabouts, and...
Yeah, right about 18 years ago.
I've been that friend ever since.
So, Michael, would you mind translating? What was this poison that he sold you?
Well, the maybe more sanitized version is we met at college. We were both freshmen at Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato, Minnesota, and met there. We didn't meet through any class. We met through a stage performance. This was we had met prior to this, but our friendship probably truly started in our sophomore year when we were both on stage acting in Romeo and Juliet, and in which I played Romeo and Ethan was the apothecary. Hence, he sold me poison.
I have a terrible habit of starting the story at the end and just sort of working backwards from there.
No, I think it works much better that way. Speaking of poison, are you guys drinking anything nice at the moment?
Yes. I am drinking the Glasgow Blend Compass Box, or Compass Box Glasgow Blend Scotch.
Lovely.
Which Ethan introduced me to.
I now feel like I should be drinking a Scotch to keep with the theme. I happen to be drinking something I kind of concocted because I had just bought a fruit juice situation and I wanted to see how it played with rum. So it's like a rum and I think it's a guava passion fruit mix.
Beautiful.
It's nice.
Well, Michael, Ethan, David in a room. Some of us with Scotch. Cheers.
Cheers.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. So, as I alluded to, you guys have a podcast. What made you guys want to start doing one?
Ethan bought a microphone. Or was it a gift? It might have been a gift.
One or the other. I genuinely don't remember. I think I did just... Sort of at a certain point in 2014 or 2015, it came to my attention that you could just buy a microphone. Like anyone could just go to a store or online and just buy one. And then there was such a thing as free recording equipment. And I guess given a toy, I wanted to play with it. That's the experience as I remember it.
So the title of our podcast is Michael and Ethan in a Room with Scotch, which is a title that one or the other of us invented for something. We just didn't have a project assigned to it.
I think it was perhaps originally going to be an absurdist play?
Yes, I think that's where the roots of it came in. And so it just kind of floated around as this ethereal thing. Michael and Ethan in a Room with Scotch was a thing. But then Ethan bought this microphone, and I think posted a picture of it on Facebook or something like that and said, I have this thing, now what do I do with it? And I think my comment was in all caps, radio plays, radio plays, radio plays. So we started collaborating at that point. We initially started with radio plays as a podcast that we called Intermission. It was scripted dramas that take place in the green room of a theater.
Nice.
And then we added a few other shows to what became the Tapestry Radio network, including Michael and Ethan in a Room with Scotch. And somehow that idea formulated that why don't we talk about books while we drink scotch and don't talk about the scotch?
I sometimes also characterize it as Michael and I are the two friends in each other's lives who are most difficult to ignore when the other one recommends a book. Like, our tastes are so similar, and secretly we respect each other's opinions enough, but
we won't admit it.
Correct.
No.
But also then you have to achieve a balance, right? Because if I read one of Michael's books, he has to read one of mine, but also vice versa. And it was almost always going to happen somehow that we had to formalize this arrangement. So it dovetailed with the podcast in terms of
put rules to it. We needed rules.
Yeah, because otherwise, without rules, life is chaos. And so I think all of that somehow coagulated together, and it was at the right moment in time in several ways. A podcast somehow emerged from that.
And so if somebody hasn't listened to you guys before, what actually happens on your podcast other than drinking and reading? Or is it just that? Is it just silence and every now and again you hear and the occasional turning of a page?
An occasional sort of hum of pleasure or displeasure.
Occasionally a book gets thrown across the room. No. Yes. No, we talk about the books. It's implied that we and the listeners have already read the books that are being discussed in the podcast. We used to give
very
spoiler
tough.
warning. But then we stopped doing that after a while. Somebody said it was annoying. I don't know.
Well, when we were doing Pints with Jack, it was an ongoing question. It's like, how much do we assume? And it is very difficult to talk about a book and not give spoilers. And how deep do you... Can you talk about why a book is really great without saying too much about what actually happens in it?
Right.
We asked ourselves
We're good at hedging, though.
Yeah, there is that. I would have said we asked ourselves that question early on and then just decided not to worry about it. Which, I say slightly facetiously, but it was sort of a stylistic choice to say we're really just going to dig into the meat of this book, or whatever it is that we're reading on a given episode. And I like to think that obviously if you've read the text under discussion, that's very organic, but I like to think that even if you haven't, it might either give you an idea of whether you want to read a text, or it might give you some things to look for if you do go in and read it. So I think I try to pitch people that it kind of works either way. Not sure how successful of a pitch that always is. But.
So
I
Michael,
have heard from
let's
people,
talk.
though, that they... Well, I have heard from people that they do listen without having read the book and then decide whether or not to read the book after the discussion. So that's for what that's worth.
Yes. I've had a few podcasts where I've done that. The Literary Life podcast is one that I've listened to for a good while. And I listen to them regardless of whether or not I've read it. But very often it does inform my choices. We'll get back to books in a moment, but let's talk about the other half of your show, which is the Scotch. What are your favorite sorts of scotches?
Well, my number one right now is the Dalwhinnie 15. It just has like a milky smoothness that I really like and a lot of rich texture to it. I tend to have... I enjoy a wide array of different kinds of scotches, whether it's Islay, Highlands, Speyside, what have you, as long as it's done well.
I have much more like particular tastes when it comes to Scotch. At any given point, if someone hands me a Scotch and it's a decent one, I won't be sorry about that. But if I'm picking the bottle, it's usually going to be smoky. I really like you saying Lefroy. Just warm. Yes, the Lefroy 10 just warms my heart anytime I even just see someone drinking it.
It's that smell of rusty nails and dirt.
Yeah, which if you ever see their advertisements, they're very self-aware about that. They'll say things like, "Oh, it's like drinking a delicious bonfire with a tire in it," or whatever. So yeah, I love I think the Lefroy 10 specifically is probably my favorite of theirs. Lagavulin, of course. The 16 is hard to parallel. I really liked the initial Nick Offerman Lagavulin 11 that came out that was finished in stout barrels, I think.
Yeah.
They have an expression out now, and I'm not sure if it's the same one or if they've done something different with it. I haven't tasted that, so I can't.
One of my co-hosts, he tried both of them. He said they're pretty good, not quite worth the money for it, though.
I think that's why I haven't dabbled in the new one. It's just at that price point. There's
you are paying a little bit just for Nick Offerman's face. That's...
So just drink regular Lagavulin and watch an episode of Parks and Rec.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think Nick Offerman himself would probably be okay with that.
Yes. Type out things that you love and hate on a typewriter and have a smoky whiskey.
Absolutely. Another element that I really like in Scotch is sort of the briny, the sea air ones. So Old Pulteney has been a favorite along those lines. But essentially any Scotch that if you can pitch me that it has a good deal of smoke and some sort of sea air or brininess to it, like that, I will certainly try it.
When I lived back in San Diego, there was a fantastic bar that had a full catalog of whiskeys that you could order. And that really got me into Canadian whiskeys of all things. Surprisingly delicious. And for a good while, Japanese whiskeys. So smooth. Smooth. Absolutely delicious. But and enough about scotches. Let's talk about books now. So we've got your taste in scotches. What are your taste in books?
The weirder, the better. No.
This explains why you started with Till We Have Faces quite early.
Yeah. So, yes, I think that was our third and fourth episodes on the podcast, Till We Have Faces. Initially, when we started the podcast, we tried doing just one episode per book and tried to limit that episode to an hour. And our second episode was on East of Eden, and so you can imagine how that went. It
is so hard. If you try and cover any book in any kind, honestly, it could be one of my kids' Mr. Men books. It's still kind of difficult just to sort of get through all of just the basic story and some of the nuances and themes in anything less than 45 minutes.
Yeah. But we do a book exchange, basically, as Ethan was talking about, where we recommend it to each other. And in a recent episode, Ethan broke down some of the reasoning behind why we recommend. Sometimes it's because this is really great and I need to share it. Sometimes it's this has been sitting on a shelf and I need a reason to read it along with somebody. Sometimes it's what just happened to me. I need someone else to experience this. So those are maybe the three big reasons.
Have there been any highlights recently?
Oh man, we've had a good set of episodes and books that we've discussed lately. The ones that just came out, our latest ones, as of this recording, are on a book called Nobber by Oisin Fagan. He's an Irish author, and it takes place during plague years in Ireland, and it's very surreal and strange, and I still have to think about that one. But
books set in Ireland always tend to be sad, in my opinion. I sort of went through that phase of every book from Ireland I picked up was basically a version of Angela's Ashes. It's like a lot of misery and death.
I think that would apply.
It does, but at least in Knobber you get a lot of bizarre weirdness and some dark humor. So, if that's your Knobber is, I loved Knobber. It is a book that is certainly not for everyone.
Yes, absolutely.
Another highlight for me recently was the book The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. I don't know if you're familiar with Louise Erdrich. She runs a bookstore in the Twin Cities, actually, and she's been a literary presence since the 90s, I want to say. And she's I don't remember which tribe, but she's Native American and often writes about both contemporary and historical themes along those lines. But in The Sentence, her main character is an indigenous woman who's gotten out of prison and gets a job at a bookstore in the Twin Cities run by a woman named Louise. And
what's it based on?
I mean, one of my favorite parts about it is like Louise appears a handful of times in the book as a character, and is never like it's never like the self-insert author who's very wise. It's always she's just kind of like either cranky or just she's
on her way up the stairs to go keep working on her writing.
Yeah, she's very much a character in the book. But and then the book also takes place largely over the course of the year 2020 in the Twin Cities. So you of course have COVID,
fraught year,
and the Black Lives Matter focus was up there for quite a while. So it was a really interesting, to me, one of the first experiences I've gotten to have of when I've like read textbooks about I don't know, restoration plays or something, and the concept that this play was about some of the people in the audience or was secretly about the king at the time. The idea that literature could both be literature but also be commenting on something that's almost still echoing in the lives of the people around it. I think I've witnessed a lot of attempts to do that fall short, as I'm sure has happened throughout history. But I would say The Sentence is one that really sticks out as really good. Well done version of that.
I'll have to track down her store, because I'm actually going to be in the Twin Cities tomorrow, because the following morning I might be becoming American.
Oh wow!
I'm going and taking my civics test.
Congratulations!
All right.
Thank you. My wife has made me promise not to try and be funny when any of the questions are asked of me. There's a set of 100, and one of them is what happened at the Declaration of Independence. The correct answer, of course, is there were a lot of traitors made, but apparently that's not one of the standard answers. But while I'm there, assuming I'm still allowed to stay in the country, I'll have to go and check out the store.
Yeah, it's Birch Bark Books,
definitely.
I believe.
Okay. Now,
there's a really good brunch place on the same block. Yeah.
Ooh. Oh, now you're selling it properly. That's much better. Yeah. I should be done by 10 or 11. That's perfect. Now, you guys have been podcasting for a good while, so we've been doing Pints for Jack for 8 seasons now, and so I'm very curious now when I speak to other podcasters, how do you stop burnout? Because a lot of podcasts do an episode, maybe 2 or 3, and then most of them die. Some of them make it a little bit beyond, but to have podcasts running for years is quite an achievement. So how would you guys say that you managed to make that happen?
The thought that immediately occurs to me is kind of how I approach a lot of things in life, especially sort of creative endeavors or other endeavors where you essentially have to try something that may or may not work. Because I was going to make fun of us earlier when we were talking about the origins of Tapestry Radio Network, because our first instinct was to try to make like 4 podcasts happen all at once. And I think Michael and Ethan in a Room with Scotch is just the one that survived. And I think it just lined up in terms of our availability, the subject matter being something we kind of engage with anyway, and just all of those planets kind of aligned, as it were. And then I think it's just kind of about both getting in a routine and being flexible. I think there have been a lot of, when we originally recorded this, Michael and I lived about 2.5 hour drive apart. So once a month, one or the other of us would get in the car and we would record together. So partly because the original concept was, this is what happens when you lock these two people in a room with only a bottle of scotch and a microphone. And of course that had to change. Michael and his family at some point moved a greater distance away, and that just wasn't practical. So, and then COVID hit. I think that helped change things as well. So we had to adapt and do mostly remote recordings. The point being, I don't know. I think it's some almost alchemy of what the project is and who the people are and how flexible that you can be is going to be the best answer I can probably come up with.
Yeah,
Michael, you have any update on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything Ethan said. No, I would just add that it makes a difference what you think you're doing. If I think I'm putting out this podcast to get immensely popular and have a great following and create a massive community, then I'm responsible to a lot of people. And I need to show up for all those people. But if I'm having a book club with my friend and we're drinking scotch and we're talking about books, then it becomes just a method of accountability for reading a book in community with somebody. And it's easier perhaps to be faithful to that sort of work than to the whole big media conglomerate that it might otherwise want to be. But no, I took on the mentality very early on that, I kind of don't care if anybody listens. I like it. I like hearing from people who do. That's a lot of fun. But I'm doing this because I'm reading a book and I'm talking about the book with Ethan and I'm drinking scotch with Ethan. So
yeah, I do like that. Now, you were talking about attitude. I've found quite typically in a podcast where there's two people, there is a David and there's a Matt. So there is usually one person that is at least trying to keep everybody on time and have a plan. And there's another one who is, I'm not going to say a cowboy, but just willing to see what happens. Is that dynamic there as well?
Ethan, you want to take that away?
Yeah, my instinct is that we both, if trying to think of a metaphor here that doesn't sound insane, but I think of the
if two men ride of a horse, one must ride behind.
I was going to go with horses also. Now I don't want to. If you envision like a wagon in the Old West, and you have the driver and the guy riding shotgun. The guy riding shotgun, as long as there's no like bandits to fight or something, he can kind of do whatever he wants. Is I think a version of the same dynamic. And what Michael and I don't think with any intentionality, but just by luck almost, fell into was just switching off which of us is the driver and which of us is riding shotgun. And I think partly it was just
you're describing Mario Kart Double Dash for those of you who ever played on the GameCube. Swap who's driving and who's shooting. That's yeah. And this probably should have gone. Where are my 90s kids at?
This probably should have gone under the answer to what can people expect when they listen to your podcast, because they can expect
beautiful similes.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to go with that. I was going to say something much more insulting about our tendency to create imagery that's very specific to very specific audiences, but
it's kind of like somebody that gets up at a talent show and does impressions, but only of the friends that they know that nobody else does.
Exactly.
And it's just like, trust me, I am nailing it.
Or sometimes of
Yes.
people, celebrities from movies that were old when the person was born. not to talk about my Jimmy Stewart impression or anything, but yeah. Anyway, I forgot.
Everybody has one. Everybody has one.
So you trade.
Yeah,
off.
we trade
And
off.
So I work in software, and we talk about pair programming, which is that same kind of idea. It's like one person's driving, the other person is sometimes checking, sometimes just entertaining the other, and then you hand off. So
Yeah.
you take it in turns. We tried that at Pints with Jack. I'm not sure if Matt was too slack or I was just too much of a control freak. It didn't last long. We found our roles soon enough.
That seems to be how more podcasts that I learn about do it. You eventually fall into sort of roles that work for you, and that's lovely too.
It might help for Ethan and me that we're both oldest siblings, so that
Say no more.
we have to control the.
Maybe that's
things
that's what it is. It's less about reining ourselves in and more about giving ourselves permission for one of us to be not the responsible one.
Right. It's being willing to trust someone else in the driver's seat for an hour, which is about my limit. Just an hour.
And do you have any particular books that you've already pre-selected that should be coming up soon if people are thinking about tuning in?
So we just recorded a set of episodes on The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton, which is the third of his books that he's written, and we have done all three. And as far as we know, he is the only author who has listened to our podcast.
Oh, wow.
So that's fun. He called us the boys once, which is fun. And then we are planning on recording sometime in the near future the book Rivermouth by Alejandra Oliva. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
I think so.
Which is a memoir of immigration, Hispanic-speaking peoples. Hispanic speaking is not a real thing.
I was going to let it
go. We knew what you meant.
Yes, thank you.
Oliva is an immigration rights activist and has spent a lot of time at the southern border in volunteer roles and translation roles. So it's a memoir that's partly about her spiritual journey, because she's in, I think, seminary at the time that the story takes place, but also her journey as like a bilingual person who has sort of dual identities, grew up in one nation, speaks two languages, and how both beautiful and uncomfortable and beautifully uncomfortable that can be.
Very cool.
And then after a couple more books, we're working on a project now. We're brainstorming it and getting it all in place, that we're calling the Year of Faust. So from this summer until next summer-ish, we're going to be reading and discussing exclusively Faust. Goethe, Marlowe, Thomas Mann, and all.
Oh, you're doing all of them. Dang.
All of them.
That's the ambition. Anyway.
And who is the one that wished you to do this?
I'm going to blame Ethan on this, but then I said yes. So
you said yes faster. You said yes faster than I've ever heard you say yes to anything. Also, that yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. That will be very interesting. So much of my education really sort of only started taking place in my 30s, and mostly through podcasts. And it was the Classical Stuff You Should Know podcast. It was the first time that they touched those books. That was my introduction, and then they connected it with the Screw Tape Letters, and I was like, oh, okay, I've got an in now.
Very good. Very good.
Wonderful. Now you guys have mentioned Tapestry Radio a couple of times. Just as we draw to a close, what actually is that?
It's a website that hosts multiple podcasts. We're calling it the Tapestry Radio Network. So tapestryradio.org is our website, and then all of the podcasts that are in our network. You can go down on the drop-down menu for our shows. Some of them are inactive. Not that they'll never post again, but they're just not as frequent. But the most frequent ones there are... Not Dead, Just Sleeping. Yes, there you go. But we've got Michael and Nathan in a room with Scotch is very active. Pokemon Rollout is a very active one that's been going on about as long as Michael and Nathan in a room with Scotch. And Vampires and Mermaids is perhaps the other most frequent one, and that's a more recent podcast as well on there. I don't know if I'm forgetting anybody.
That sounds like sort of the main ones that are currently posting, I would say.
Yes, yes. I also saw Intermission, Shakespeare in the Village, and Let's Go to the House of the Lord. Freddie goes to a podcast, and Roll to Amble.
Yes, I think Roll to Amble only ever did 2 episodes. Shakespeare in the Village was kind of a short run thing as we were doing Outdoor Shakespeare, and that was the companion podcast to the play that we were putting on. We did Much Ado About Nothing a year ago. 2 years ago.
It's my favorite. That was my absolute favorite Shakespeare play.
So good. I directed it, and I was Benedict in it. So good. I wasn't intending to star in it, but I couldn't find a Benedict.
Until all graces are found in one actor will not enter my grace.
Very good.
Lovely.
Yes. This is wonderful. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Just to say thank you for having us. This has been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not at all. I didn't actually explain this to the viewers at the beginning. They sent me a message just saying hi, and I found out the name of their podcast and was like, well, these are people I clearly need to hang out with. And so I'm very glad we've done that.
Well, you're like halfway between me and Ethan, so like we'll have to like crash here. No.
Oh, I was going to say, if you're ever in the Madison area, you can crash at mine. I
might take you up on that.
Yeah, I have a guest bed and the whole. It's like off the floor, and in my 30s I started needing both for myself and others to not sleep on the floor anymore when we crash at people's places. So.
I have small children, so I regularly find myself pushed out of the bed and onto the floor. So I'm actually kind of great at that now.
I feel that.
But gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. And viewers, please join us again next time. We'll continue going further up and further in. Cheers.
Sure.